I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Allred?
Here.
Ms. Billman?
Here.
Mr. Fell?
Here.
Mr. Hopkins? Ms. McFarland? Mr. Weisskopf? And Ms. Yu.
Here.
All right, so it looks like we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes from the July 8th, 2021 meeting. Are there any motions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting?
I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Is your light green?
Yeah. And is this any better? Okay. Sorry, it's the first time in the mask at a meeting, so. Okay. Any motions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
All right.
Second.
We have a second. So a motion by Mr. Fell and a second by Ms. Bilbin. Any discussion of the minutes? Any changes? If not, can we have a roll call?
Since we're in person now, we don't need to do roll calls anymore. We can just do a voice vote.
Okay. So
At this point, you say all those
Oh.
in favor.
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, looks like that passes. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting, July 8th meeting. Sorry about that. Do we have any communications?
We did receive one additional piece of communication that I believe was passed out to you already.
Yeah, so
Uh,
do you want me to summarize that now or during the public input?
Sure, yeah, if you want to do that now.
Okay, so we did receive one piece of input from the public on, this is for plan case 2427 SU21, the request by Cunningham Township's Supervisor Office for a special use permit. This is from a property owner near by the properties that are under consideration, and it raises some concerns about occupancy and egress issues in terms of the number of people that would be living in each of the units. Raises some concerns about security in terms of impacts on surrounding property, particularly the business that this person owns, and concerns about appearance and the impact that that might have on customers and people who are frequenting the businesses in the area there. Sure. Sorry about that. Okay, so is it possible to turn up the volume? Or?
I don't know. Is it possible, UPTV folks, to turn up the volume on our microphones? I guess specifically the chair's microphone. Can you?
This one.
Yeah, I guess I suppose on all of them, since. Okay, so not into the room, so we just have to speak louder.
All right.
Okay, we will speak louder.
Okay. Sorry, so I'll go over this one again. So we had one piece of input that was received on the case that we'll be hearing, or we'll be talking about later. This is the Cunningham Township application for a special use permit for a property on California Street. This came in from a property owner on Vine Street, nearby this location, raising some concerns about increased occupancy of the apartments in the proposed apartment buildings, concerns about what this change in use, how this change in use would impact security and appearance of the subject properties, and how that would impact business operations for the surrounding properties. So just raising some concerns. Good?
No, but we have extra copies for you if you like. Will be part of the public record so you can hear it.
Okay. So moving on, we don't have any continued public hearings. We don't have any old business. So we'll move on to our new public hearings for this evening. Plan case number 2425T21. Do I need to read the whole thing? Yeah. A request by the Urbana Zoning Administrator to amend the Urbana Zoning Ordinance with changes to Article 2, definitions, Article 5, use regulations, Article 6, development regulations, and other relevant sections to facilitate solar energy system installation. This case has been continued to the August 19th regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Plan case number 2426T21, a request by the Urbana Zoning Administrator to amend the Urbana Zoning Ordinance with changes to Article 11, administration, enforcement, amendments, and fees, and other relevant section to change how the zoning administrator is appointed. This case has also been continued to the August 19th, 2021 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. So that brings us to plan case number 2427 SU21, a request by the Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office for a special use permit to allow a home for adjustment and office at 206 and 208 East California Avenue in the R4 medium density multifamily residential zoning district. So I believe we have a presentation from staff at this point.
We do, yes. So I'm filling in for Kat Trotter, who is taking a well-deserved vacation this week. So I've conscripted myself to give the presentation in her absence. So before I begin, I wanted to make a couple points about terminology that I'll be using, just so we're all on the same page. The first is that home for adjustment is a pretty outdated term, although it's still in our zoning ordinance. So from this point on, I'll just use the term emergency housing, so that, which is kind of how the zoning ordinance defines home for adjustment anyway. Second, Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office is kind of a mouthful, so I will refer to the applicant as the Township Supervisor for the remainder of the presentation. Okay, so to begin, the Township Supervisor has applied for a special use permit to allow emergency housing and an office in the two apartment buildings at 206 and 208 East California Avenue, which you can see on your screen. The Township Supervisor purchased the two properties in May and plans to use the 8 existing apartments as part of their housing assistance program, including emergency housing for families and residents with disabilities. In its first year, the Township Supervisor's Housing Assistance Program supported 29 households, including 35 children in Urbana schools, and according to the Township Supervisor, 97% of the households have exited that program into a more stable living situation. The emergency housing program currently operates out of a hotel where families stay in single-room units, which only have a microwave for cooking. At the end of this month, the hotel will no longer be an option for the program. The requested special use permit would allow the program to continue by allowing it to operate out of the 2 apartment buildings at 206 and 208 East California Avenue. Without the special use permit, The township supervisor states that they would no longer be able to operate the program. So this site, as you can see it's a little bit of a hazy map, but it's not far from where we're at today. It's just south on Vine Street and west a couple lots onto California Avenue. It's also just south of Lincoln Square and the market at the square. Then to the south are residential uses. To the west are some business uses, and to the east are also business uses. The adjacent zoning, it's a mix of business to the north and east and residential to the south and west. So speaking of the proposed uses, they would be to provide emergency housing for families and people with disabilities, and a small office space for storage of materials and for use by case managers as part of the emergency housing assistance program. So that program began in 2020, and it works alongside community partners and provides shelter, housing advocacy, and case management services for people and families who need it. Families are referred to the program through the Urbana School District or through Crisis Nursery. Then they are carefully screened and moved into furnished housing. A case manager makes contact with participants 3 or 4 times per week and visits once or twice a week. The program can also provide food to residents once every 2 weeks and child care to heads of households so that they can find work and find stable housing. As I said, there are 8 apartment units on the site that's split evenly between 2 buildings. Let's see. So this is the first building. This is the western building, and then the building to the east. 6 of these units are accessible to people with disabilities. Those are the ground floor units. So the 4 you see here, and then the 2 ground floor units you see here. The township supervisor intends to use, on average, 5 of the units for emergency housing, but they would like the flexibility to use all 8 units if the need arises in the future. The office use would be incidental to the emergency housing use, but since professional and business offices also require a special use permit in the R4 zoning district, that use is part of this special use permit request as well. The housing and the office uses would use the existing layout of the apartment buildings with some interior renovations, which would include new flooring and installing washers and dryers in some of the units. These buildings are currently classified as apartments on their certificates of occupancy, so that's according to the building code. And that allows for long-term residential use for residency of more than 30 days. If they wanted to use the units for stays of less than 30 days, or 30 days or less, I suppose is technically correct, the buildings would be reclassified as transient housing, and they would require new certificates of occupancy. Also, to add an office space into one of the existing buildings, a new certificate of occupancy would be required. So if the buildings are used for either transient housing, so 30 days or less, or for office uses, the township would be required to have a code analysis done on the buildings to ensure that they meet the building code requirements for those uses. They'd also then need to make the necessary changes to get the new certificates of occupancy so they could be used for those uses. On July 29th, the township hosted a neighborhood meeting at the Urbana Free Library. There were 35 people there, which about 25 of those were members of the public. There were other township staff there, a few city staff members, and a couple of council members as well. At that meeting, the township staff explained the reasons for the special use permit. They spoke about the emergency housing program, the plans for the properties, and the Adopt a Unit program, which asks for members of the community to donate household items to furnish residential units. They also answered questions about the emergency housing program and how it will operate at this location. So to be granted a special use permit, there are 3 criteria that must be met, and I'll go through those briefly here. So number 1 is that the proposed use is conducive to the public convenience at that location. Using the existing apartment buildings for emergency housing would be conducive to the public convenience at this location. These buildings have been on the property for over 50 years, and the proposed use would align with the residential area that they are in. This site is close to schools, it's close to public transportation, grocery stores, and recreational areas, which is convenient for families and children in need of housing. Number 2 is that the use is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that it will not be unreasonably injurious or detrimental to the district in which it is located or otherwise injurious to the public welfare. The proposed use would occupy the 2 existing apartment buildings that are on the site now. The Urbana School District and Crisis Nursery refers families to the Township Supervisor's housing program, and then they are carefully screened and moved into furnished housing. A case manager makes phone contact with the participants multiple times per week and visits the home 1 to 2 times per week. The proposed office would be integrated into one of the existing apartment buildings and would allow case managers to work on site, which should help better acclimate the residents to the surrounding neighborhood. Additionally, if needed, code analysis will be required to ensure that the buildings comply with the building safety regulations for the proposed uses. So that's, again, the transient housing and the office use. And finally, number 3, that the proposed use conforms to the applicable regulations and standards of and preserves the essential character of the district in which it shall be located. The existing buildings already conform to the standards of and preserve the essential character of the R4 zoning district. The township supervisor would like to use the existing apartment buildings without any exterior modifications for their emergency housing program and potentially an office. They would add new flooring and washers and dryers to update the apartment units. And the use is simply a change from apartment housing to emergency housing, which differ mostly by the length of stay for residents. It will continue to be used as residential and meets the intent of the R4 zoning district. So, in this case, the Plan Commission has 3 options. You can forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to approve the special use permit as requested. You can forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to approve the special use permit with any conditions deemed appropriate or necessary for the public health, safety, and welfare, and to carry out the purposes of the city's municipal code. Or you can forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of denial of the special use permit. In all of these cases, the Plan Commission should articulate findings supporting approval or denial. The staff recommendation is to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of approval with 2 conditions. The first is that the applicant have a licensed architect conduct a code analysis on the apartment buildings and makes any necessary building modifications to bring the units up to code. The second is that prior to the issuance of any new certificates of occupancy, to allow either the transient residential or the office use. That's what the R1 or B stand for. That residents will be required to live in the building for at least 30 days. So, sorry, let me state that second one in clearer terms. So that's saying until they would make modifications to make the buildings either that R1 or B designations, everybody who stays there has to stay at least 30 days. I think that was slightly more clear. Okay, that concludes my report. I will take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any questions for staff?
Who monitors how long the stay is? 30 days. Who monitors that?
Well, yeah. Can you Is your mic on?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does sound really,
Who-
really
Who
quiet. out here.
monitors the length of a resident's stay?
Well, the township will monitor that, and I believe they keep good records of that. That's probably a question that you can ask them.
Ms. Billman?
Who follows up on these conditions? Who, how, when? I mean,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it goes along with what he was saying.
Right.
I mean,
well,
there's got to be somebody in the city who's paying attention to this stuff, and I know
Right.
you're already stretched.
yeah, that's our building safety division, and this is something they do in the course of their regular work. They review they would review the code analysis, and then they also are the ones that issue the certificates of occupancy. So our building safety folks would be the ones who would go in and say, your code analysis says you need to do these things. You have done them or you haven't done them, and then they would issue them the new certificate of occupancy or not.
Any other questions? I had a question. So the second condition, the R1 and the B, so if before that new certificate of occupancy would be issued, not only would the residents would have to stay more than 30 days, but they couldn't occupy and use the the office space. Is that the correct understanding?
Right. If they choose to put an office in, then they would need to do a code analysis and then get the new certificate of occupancy before they could go in and use that office.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
All right. Thank you all.
Oh, Miss Yu?
I just want to make sure I understand. In the screen here, it says building code as R1 or B. It's different than the land use code, right?
Right. And we don't do that just to confuse people, but it is confusing. Yeah, those are building code. Yeah, those are building code designations. They have nothing to do with zoning.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll briefly go over the rules for the public hearing portion. We'll start off, the petitioner can have a chance to address the commission, and we may have some questions. Then anyone in favor will be allowed to address the commission. Anyone opposed will be allowed to address the commission. Then at the end, if it's needed, the petitioner can address the commission again and respond to previous comments. Then we'll close the public input portion, discuss, and possibly vote. So do we have the petitioner or representative here this evening? Yes. Okay, thanks. And I just asked when you come up to give your comment, if you could sign in on the sign-in sheet and state your name.
Sure. Jasmine, pen's not working. Okay. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
So my name is Danielle Chenoweth. I'm the Cunningham Township Supervisor. I'm the petitioner in this case. I also have with me the Program Director of Cunningham Township, Jasmine Hernandez. And she has been the person who helped to, with me, design the program and implement. So she's run the program for this last year and can answer program-specific questions. So just a few contextual things. First, our office has a plan to end homelessness in Urbana. We think that this is entirely possible given the number of homeless residents, and we'd like to start with our kids, especially our literally homeless kids. I wanted to give just a very brief history that speaks to the issue of appropriateness of this use at this property. I became township supervisor May 17th of 2017, and at the time we had 26 general assistance clients, and all we did was income maintenance. I came in on my first day and I received a phone call from a family that was homeless. And I said, we don't have any program to house people. We do general assistance. On my second day, I received a walk-in. On my fifth day, I received another walk-in. I had children. We don't even have that service at Township. But the number one call, the 211 in our community for years, has been homelessness and housing insecurity issues. And so, Township, our mission and our focus is to provide, to fill gaps that our community has. We're hyper-local public aid, and we're very focused on the specific needs of our community, which change over time. When I was a town board member in 2001 to 2008 with Esther Pat, half of the money that went out the door was medical payments. With the Affordable Care Act, that has changed. Our new crisis in our community is housing. 88% of renters in the city of Urbana were rent burdened before COVID. 12% of renters in Champaign County are behind on rent right now. 14 people received eviction notices by the Sheriff's Department this week alone, and this is during a moratorium. We're in the eviction court every single week. So what I did is when I started seeing families coming to us and individuals, I began to seek resources for them. I went to their Urbana Rotary Club and I asked, you all are the leaders of this community. It was the head of the park district. It was the mayor. I said, I've got a homeless family. Where do I put them? And they said, Courage Connection. And I said, wrong. Unless they're actively fleeing domestic violence with a credible threat in our community, they will not take them, right? And so then they said, oh, Crisis Nursery. I said, wrong. Unless you have a child they will only take children under 6 to stay overnight or during the day. The mom sleeps in a car outside of Crisis Nursery, right? You want to talk about health and safety and what is appropriate for our community? That is a public safety issue that has been in our community for years. They said, well, they can go to See You at Home or Time Center, whatever that place is called. I said, wrong. They're closed in the summer. This was at the time. They were closed in the summer. Now they've been closed this summer as well. And they only take single individuals, and at the time they only took men, right? So here's a situation where our community has had an invisible crisis for a long time, and it's called mommies with babies sleeping in their cars. And they are in cul-de-sacs, and they are tucked away, hidden. And the reason they're hidden is because they are afraid their children are going to be taken away from them. So from my very first day, I was deluged with the crisis of rental assistance needs and housing needs for homeless families and individuals. So we developed a rental assistance program, which I won't go into, but that has helped to keep people in housing, right? Because ultimately we want to keep people in their own home. We do not want to have them in emergency housing. So that rental assistance program has been very powerful, and we help about a dozen families. We helped 20 this last month. That was a record, right? But we typically help between 8 and 12 families with rental assistance. So then I started to talk with the community. I said, how could we fund someone who could provide shelter for families? And I found a community. Most people said, no, not it, not me. But I found an organization that had in the past, and we got through their board. We got funding. I lined up almost $500,000 for them to run shelter. And then they had a leadership change, and the new staff said, nope, we don't want it, and we had to start over. So then I began to ask other community members. In the meantime, Regional Office of Education, which used to house homeless families for 3 to 8 days, stopped their program in May of 2019. So now we have less for families, not more for families, except for rental assistance, right? So then we did a pilot program at Cunningham Township because I consider our dignity and humanity was on the line about whether or not we were going to provide shelter for folks. So we did it at a hotel for the first 6 months of 2018. And we served all homeless families, McKinney-Vento Act, definition, and literally. So folks who are couch surfing, that nice term for families that are unstably housed, as well as literally homeless. We had 15 families a month, $16,000 a month. We had to stop the program because I didn't have capacity to run it. And then I continued to work to try to find someone who could provide this program. COVID hits. You got mommies and babies on the street still coming to our office. And I reached out to the community and said, help. They gave $100,000 in small donations. We've run this emergency program entirely off donations for our first year, right? So we were able to create a program that was for literally homeless families. We constrained it to that, to folks just with Urbana school children. So we constrained it to Urbana. And we set up expert case management services with a person with a master's degree in social work and a social work experience. That way, we are able to focus on success for every single family. And that family essentially, they create, I'll have Jasmine explain the program in a bit in terms of what it looks like so that you understand kind of the question of who's tracking the number of days and how long people typically stay in the program and what services we provide. But the moral of the story is we've helped, at this point, 30 families. In fact, we had 2 households move out this week into stable housing. So we are moving poco a poco, right, with families, and we're working very closely with the school district. So the counselors and the social workers will refer folks as well as crisis nursery, where they know if they're putting their children at crisis nursery overnight, that's usually a good sign they don't have other places to go. So I am extremely proud of this program. I'm extremely proud to be a resident of Urbana because we went to the voters and said, hey, this is all private donations, but if you want to keep this program, we need you to restore our tax levy and make us whole again. And we need a little bit extra. So we went to the Urbana voters, 62% during a pandemic, during economic crisis, voted to restore our levy and give us what ended up being $600,000 a year more in taxes, right? So as a result, I was able to promise that we could keep this program going. Now, I knew that August was going to hit and we were not going to be able to have it in a hotel shelter anymore, because what we had in our last pilot program was that Mom's Day weekend comes, all of our moms have to move out. It's anti-Mom's Day weekend for our moms, while it's pro-Mom's Day weekend for the U of I moms, because they literally were moved out of housing on those weekends. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to have moms with their kids crammed in a small space, eating out of microwaves, right? I don't think that this is how people should live, but it's better than a car, right? So what I wanted to do is I wanted us to purchase property. We had a nest egg. We looked for a property, and it needed to be close to downtown, walking distance from the schools, walking distance from the parks, really close to grocery and transportation. And we looked at 6, 7 different properties that fit this criteria. This one was the ideal one for us. The price was right, and our town board unanimously supported us in the process of purchasing it. This entire time, I've been extremely clear with the city. I've been extremely clear with the public exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we had a wonderful neighborhood meeting with the 35 plus, I think there was another 10 of us who were there to answer questions and discuss. We serve the people of Urbana. We're fully transparent. People can come ask us any questions. Our door is open and our phones are on during business hours. I am going to have Jasmine just provide a brief overview of what case management looks like, so that you understand when we talk about having an office at this location, the importance of having that at this location, and also understanding how the numbers fluctuate so much that having that flexibility of the full 8. Now, we do have 2 tenants who are there who we're working with and who will stay through next year. So it would only be 6 this year at maximum, 5 if we use one for an office. And then in the future, we could go to 8 and have that flexibility if we need to. So I'm going to introduce or pass it off to Jasmine to have her talk just a little bit about the program and how it operates, and then we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Chenoweth.
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? We're good? Okay. So the program itself, it's an emergency housing program. I've been the case manager for the program. We are serving literally homeless families with school-aged children or just children that are in Urbana School District schools or staying at Crisis Nursery. We also help those that, when CU at Home is open, are unable to stay at CU at Home due to physical disabilities or other disabilities. And so those are a part of our program too. At this time, our average length of stay is 41 days. So it is the program, we reframed it to be a 30-day minimum program after seeing and working with a lot of our families and making sure that they're receiving the best referrals, receiving the best services. While they're under my case management, you know, we receive a referral, we do our very in-depth screening, we find out what, aside from housing, what are the other needs, so that we know those from day one, and we're working on those as well as housing. So families are receiving wraparound services. We're making sure that they're getting childcare applications, TANF applications. We're making sure we're connecting them with the experts in the community for link and medical insurance. We're ensuring that they have phones, and you know, once they move on, that where they're connected to broadband, because internet, we've seen over the last year, is so important and so much a needed infrastructure piece. But after we receive referrals and we do the screenings, I'm very honest with the families. They do complete weekly tasks in order to remain compliant, among other things that they need to sign off on. A couple of agreements that they need to sign off on are, you know, the program MOU, which lists out the rules of the program, the expectations of the program. We also have a rights and responsibilities page, or form, I should say, that's very clear to them what their rights are in the programs, and what their responsibilities are during that program. As stated earlier, with the hotel use, I drive out to the hotel a lot. Many of the families don't have their own reliable transportation, so I am driving to them to meet their needs. This location will put them in a much more central location where that they won't have to go through the weekend without being able to get anywhere because of the lack of reliable transportation that they have, and being able to get their children around. So that addresses some of the concerns of, you know, they know going in what their responsibilities are, what we're asking of them. We do have a form that lays out a little bit of what the tasks each week are to be completed, but we're flexible with the families to make sure that they're meeting their needs. However, some things such as like vital documentation, which they're missing a lot of the time as well, we need to get done as early as possible. We need to send those requests out as soon as possible, and we're making sure that we're providing those wraparound services as well.
And I just wanted to add one thing, because we looked into the length of stay issue. I wanted to clarify a change in our program. So our program currently, because we're paying day by day at the hotel, and our hotel costs have gone up 150% as of July 1. Essentially, we looked at we track every person and the number of days that they've stayed. So we have a spreadsheet with, you know, and every day it ticks off and you can see the number of days going up, right? And we have an average amount. But what we have been doing in our current program is transferring folks to the emergency family shelter in Champaign, which is also 8 units in Champaign, also very peaceful. You know, they're a good model for essentially what a emergency housing program can look like. That's 8 units in a neighborhood, which is that it's a peaceful, successful place that has had very few problems. So essentially, we've been transferring Urbana school children to Champaign, but we will not be doing that anymore because we're not paying day by day. We're going to keep them in Urbana. So we removed the folks who we had transferred, and we looked at the average stay of a family that we've kept, and that's 57 days. So essentially, we're fine with the constraint of no less than 30 days because, frankly, we can't move a family into stable housing in less than about 45 days. That would be difficult for us. So we're fine with that piece. I also want to speak to the office use. I really think we went back and forth because honestly, it's a unit we could use for a family. So there's a piece of me that says, hey, we shouldn't have an office at this location. Our office is within, sight distance from the property, our township office. But as I started to think about it, I really felt that it would be the best service to the participants. It would have more eyes and ears on the property. We'd be able to respond to tenant concerns because we do have 2 tenants at that location. We want to meet their needs. To have an office at that location, I think, will allow us to provide better services to the participants and to the tenants. And frankly, to the businesses in the neighborhood, we would just have more presence there. And so we can seek architects' review of that to see what code issues might be with that. That said, it's not a public office. Like, it's not a place where the public comes and meets with us. It's not open to the public. It would have 2 staff members, possibly 3 with a very part-time intern who would be in one of the 1-bedroom units. And essentially, we would be using it exclusively for program uses at that location. So I just wanted to clarify those. I'm happy to take any questions you have. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Chenoweth or Ms. Hernandez? Mr. Fell?
Do you have, is there any state oversight of this program?
No.
Okay.
Ms. Billman?
How many hotel rooms have you been using in the past?
We have used, but so let me caveat that See You at Home closed in June. And so we decided that our general assistance participants who are homeless and staying at See You at Home, we decided to house them with our Angel Donor Fund, our private donation fund. So I would say, so that increased the number of folks. We have had anywhere between 1 and 8 in hotels at any given time, but the 8 came from when we started housing folks from See You at Home when they first closed. Our average number of participants is 4.5 approximately, and that includes a mixture of people with disabilities and families. And a number of folks with disabilities, we've had folks in wheelchairs who cannot be accommodated at See You at Home, and we have had folks with medical equipment or medical fragility where they could not be accommodated at See You at Home, and they were concerned about there being medical crisis. So that generally is the group of folks we would be supporting with disabilities at this location.
Okay, approximately, I know this is going to be a range, but what percentage of the cases have kids?
We could look, I would say it's probably 3 out of 4 until we hit the See You at Home time, and then it became more singles. I mean, right now we actually have almost all single individuals.
Okay.
So it's a mixture. I do want to point out, though, and I'm concerned a little bit about some of the initial public input is this property is like children are allowed by right. And one of the things that we see in the community is discrimination against families with children in rental property. And that's illegal in the city of Urbana. It is rampant. And so we have a right to have children at this location. I'm not necessarily pushing back on you, but I just kind of want to speak to the public to say that oftentimes there's this there's too many children. The fact of the matter is people have a right to have children, and they have a right to be rented to, or whether it's a private rental or it's a program, they have a right to have children. And we are only constrained by basically the property code, the building code, which says certain number of square feet for children. Now, typically the families we have 1 to 3 children. We did have one family with 6 children. And we were able to accommodate them with multiple hotel rooms. We had to get really creative to do that. But that is the largest family that we have had. And typically I'd say, it's a smaller family arrangement.
I just want to comment, I wish there was a park very close.
Well, there is. It's called the school.
What school?
So there's Carl Park, and then there's the middle school and high school, and so both
Yeah,
of those have large green
I
spaces.
guess I'm thinking of toddlers and grade school age, but, and I wish there was room for playground equipment, swings or slide or something in there. But anyway, I'm just thinking about that stuff.
We have discussed that as well because we do own the parking that is next to that, and
There isn't
they're
room.
just what's that?
It doesn't look like there's any
Well,
room
the issue
safe.
probably has a little bit more to do with liability and the fact that that's also a parking lot that
Right,
is near
yes.
there. So, we've been basically right by the interstate. That has not been an ideal location. And what we will encourage families to do is essentially take the children to the park, because Carl has a really lovely park for small children, and it's completely within walking distance of this location.
Yeah, I'm not putting it on you. I'm
Absolutely.
just saying,
But no, we've thought about this.
Yeah.
It's,
I'm sure.
I would like a park on every corner if it was up to me, so.
Any other questions? No? All right, thank you. So seeing that there are no other questions, we'll open it up to the general public.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Again, we'll start with anyone who wants to speak in favor of the proposal, and then after that, we'll move on to anyone that is opposed. So anyone that's in favor that wants to speak, you can approach the microphone. And again, just sign in if you could and give us your name. That's on the table here.
Okay. All right. Hi, I am Jen Straub. I'm the Housing Advocacy Coordinator at Cunningham Township, but I'm also a resident of Urbana. 3 of my children currently attend the schools that the children in this program will attend if we are granted the special use permit. In the last year, I've seen the way that lives have been changed by this program. We are a soft place to land and a guiding hand for families who need just a little help to get on their feet. Right now, these families, as Danielle said, are staying in hotel rooms with their children for several months at a time. I don't know how many of you have children. I've been with my 4 since the beginning of the pandemic. It's a lot, and we have we have a lot of rooms. So you can imagine the extra stress on families already dealing with crises. So separate living spaces, a place for kids to do their homework. These are all things that are going to improve the quality of lives of the people that we work with immensely. There's absolutely nothing to be gained by denying Urbana families this opportunity. Your choice is going to affect family safety, community safety, family economic and educational successes, and with that, the successes of our neighborhood schools. In the words of Senator Paul Wellstone, we all do better when we all do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strout. Any questions for Ms. Strout? No? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Matthew Murray. I've lived in Urbana for almost 29 years, just not far from here in historic East Urbana on High Street. I've also, this will be my 19th year working at Urbana High School. I'm a teacher librarian there. And I just want to make a few very brief comments. I've walked past this building. I didn't realize there was going to be a meeting until earlier today. For years I worked at the mental health center, and we had a lot of people in public housing under disability. And I really love this arrangement. It's small. It seems like it's very manageable. It's something that the township, I think, will have no trouble keeping up and keeping on top of. I really like their idea of starting out with 6 units of occupancy and maybe moving to 8. That just seems like a really good idea. And a couple things I did just want to quickly say is about a month ago, traveled to Washington State to see my grandsons. and was in the capital there, Olympia, and it was just absolutely overwhelming, the situation for people who are unhoused, living in tent encampments of several hundred tents on public lands, scattered around. It seems like a terrible place to have children, women, single women, older people, and it seems like a problem that has just gotten out of hand. I think the city wants to do something about it, but it's probably kind of late in the game. I mean, I think they've been overwhelmed by this, and so it really made me happy to see that Urbana, the township, has been taking a very proactive measures to try to stay on top of people who are in crisis financially and with food security and now with housing. I just think it's a great idea. I think it's a great way to stay ahead of the problem and actually to make some real positive changes for the people who are going to live here, work here, and are going to be in my school where I work. So I'm really happy about that. I also just think the location seems really ideal. One, that it's small, and also that it's located close to, I mean, to me, it's located in an area that is kind of on that border transition between businesses, retail stores, and then small residential areas. So it really does seem like a great idea. I'm very much in favor of it. I just think and I do think it's a really good way for our city government to get involved in tackling some of the problems of housing security that people face. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Esther Pat. I've lived in West Urbana for 47 years. I used to be a member of the Urbana City Council, and I was director of the tenant union for decades. And I tell you all this because I am dismayed that the Urbana zoning ordinance is such that it requires a special use permit to use a property for the identical use that it essentially the identical use that it currently has. But I understand that. It was like the Europa House case you guys had at the beginning of the summer. The same thing. I thought, what? Europa House, 802 West Oregon, has been an apartment building rented to people to live in as apartments for 50 years, and now the new owner is going to rent it to the general public and not just to U of I students as certified housing, and they needed plan commission approval. But, all right, that's the way these things work, and evidently that's what this is too. This is just like Europa House in reverse. This is an apartment building, or two apartment buildings, a little apartment complex that for 50 years has been rented by people to live in, and now the township owns it, and they're going to rent it to specific people to live in. And that is really the only difference. I've been referring people to this place for years. One of my downstairs neighbor was looking for a new place. I sent her there because it is a great location in terms of shopping, proximity to schools, Urbana Free Library, and public transportation, as well as the courthouse and the township. And frankly, it just amazes me right now, all the stuff on the news about the eviction moratorium, and everyone's asking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to these people? As though people haven't been evicted and homeless, you know, for like my whole lifetime. It's just now there are going to be more. And it is frustrating that it's so hard to find places for people to stay, whether it's for 3 months or for a year, when they are, once they become homeless. And the reason is, the real reason you even have to deal with this is prejudice. It's about prejudice. If you get cancer, does that make you a lesser person than you are now? No. If you lose your job, does that make you a lesser person than you are now? No. If you lose your housing, does that make you a lesser person than you are? No. But lots of people, and they have heard them speak in this chamber when I was sitting on that side of the table and this one, feel that if the people living in housing were homeless before they lived there, that makes them bad people, and they will have a negative impact on the neighborhood. Even if they're no different than the people who lived there before, except because you know that about them, then somehow that means, homeless doesn't mean criminal. Homeless doesn't mean dangerous. Homeless doesn't mean irresponsible. And in fact, considering that landlords all over town rent to whomever they want, under any circumstances, I could have bought this property myself and just rented it to people on a month-to-month basis and let people leave after 6 weeks. you would have no say about it. But because the township is doing it in a controlled and organized way, you get letters like that public input where the owner of an auto repair place on a arterial street is concerned about the 8-unit building behind his property that has been there for half a century, but now because the people will be different, he thinks, then maybe, or they think, then maybe that's a problem. I beg you to not even dignify that. This land use is changing. The actual change is so minuscule that it should really just be pro forma to recommend approval and for the city council to approve the special use permit for this property, and I do hope you will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pat.
Any questions?
Hello, everybody. My name is Shaya. I am an advocate over at Cunningham Township. I will say, as someone who's done street outreach for the last year during COVID, year and a half during COVID, the need is there. I have met mothers on the street asking for money on the corners. I've met people under viaducts. I've met people in the middle of where U of I students are asking for things that our community don't have. And so, and as somebody that was formerly a homeless youth with my mother and my siblings, I kind of understand the prejudice that kind of goes along with that. And to see somebody feel some type of way about a homeless individual really does kind of dehumanize them, and it doesn't really give them the opportunity to feel like they have dignity to continue to move forward. And the one thing that we like to offer them is dignity and humanity so that they can get the self-worth to continue to move forward for them and their children. So that's all I wanted to add. I think the need is there. I think that as somebody who will be doing case management over at this new property, I really do take this job seriously because, like I said, I have been in their position before, and I know how critical it is to education as well as to the survival of the parents to have a little bit of support. And so that's what we're here to offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello?
My name is Mark Enslin. I live over by Urbana High School. For 10 years, I lived just to the next street over from the property that's under discussion, which I completely back the proposal from the township. Those 10 years, I had a little bit of interaction with the people who live there. And in that area also, at the end of that same block, a friend of mine who lives in Section 8 housing, I consider the neighborhood to be one that would be, I would hope, kind of, it's already a varied neighborhood, and I don't see any problem with people who would be needing emergency housing to be in this place. And in addition to the nearby amenities and the positive qualities that have been mentioned, there's a community garden 2 blocks from this place that has a weekly outdoor potluck cookout kind of thing, which is also very welcoming to people. And so the sense of trying to add to people feeling welcome in our town that the township has been doing since Danielle Chenoweth was elected as a supervisor, I think that what you all as a commission can do to support that, I think is really needed. And is there anything I want to add? So if I were still living where I used to live, I would welcome such people as neighbors, and the flexibility that they're asking for, I see as in line with the kind of attention, loving attention to people with needs in our community that the township has been doing. I think it'd be good for you to support that, the flexibility that was being asked for. In a society that has such wide range of economic circumstances, it is hard for us to understand the lives of other people. I've been volunteering with a program, a food assistance program that's partially supported by the township, and so I've been visiting people in circumstances that are ones where I kind of see the huge variety of precariousness that exists, and that this would be providing for families and children, I think, is great. And one other aspect I wanted to mention is the fact that it's accessible is really unusual. Another friend of mine who was looking for accessible housing in Urbana in this area, and it was hard to find. And so the fact that they've found this place with that location sounds like a super plus. So I really back this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments.
Hello. Sorry, the pen is giving a little trouble.
That's okay.
My name is Jane McClintock, and I just want to speak a little bit to my experience with the program and also my connection to the neighborhood. I'll start with the latter. My family business has many units. I'm actually probably almost 20 units just within 2 blocks. So, I do have some investment in the neighborhood, and I don't have any concerns that this would affect property values or, I think it's a very suitable use for the area, and is, as Esther pointed to, it's not going to change the character of the neighborhood in any way, to my mind. The office seems like it would be totally ordinary, and probably no one would notice that it was there. And certainly the residential use is going to be the same as is currently occurring. And I do have some connection to the program because I've been volunteering a little bit with both the food assistance program that Mark mentioned earlier, and also with some of the furnishings of the permanent housing that people move into out of this program. So I've met some of the families and just want to say that they're really wonderful and really grateful for the support, and just seemed like they were really back on their feet and, settled, and just, I think the investment that the township is offering to make in these families is tremendously valuable to these children. I can't imagine, what a disruption it could be for a child to become homeless when they're in school and they're trying to, to grow up and to get their education. And so to be able to have the soft landing and turn things around to a stable place is just an amazing investment for us to be able to make as a community, and I'm really grateful to Township for taking it on. And yeah, I'm really support the program, and hope that you guys will too. Thank you.
Thank you.
This pen does not work. Hi, my name is Saba Manetti Tesfai. I'm 18 years old. I went to Leal Elementary School, and let me sign my name real quick. I went to Leal Elementary School, and I went to Urbana High School. I recently graduated. I've lived in Urbana my whole life. I was kicked out of my house a couple months ago, and if I didn't have family willing to take me in, Township would have been the place I would have called. I used to live a block away from the apartments in question, so I used to go to the farmer's market, play at Carl Park. I grew up in that area, and after beginning to intern at Township, I've really started to see both sides of the equation, having experienced the disparity of being houseless and also guiding people that are homeless through their life and their pressure that they're dealing with. So yeah, I just wanted to say, oh yeah, also after CU at Home was closed, it's been hard for Township to find housing for everybody, and Township is kind of like the place people call when they're in horrible situations, being homeless, dealing with trauma. So yeah, and also with the eviction moratorium being lifted soon, we need this housing in question. So yeah, I'm just urging you to give us this special use permit and allow us to continue to keep this city afloat. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to speak in favor of the proposal? All right, we'll move on to anyone who wants to speak in opposition of the proposal.
I mostly have questions. Now, is this where I would ask those questions, or is that a different venue to have those questions answered?
Sure, you can raise your questions and your comments, and then whether it's the city staff or the petitioner, they'll have a chance to respond.
Okay. My name is Amanda Coyle. I live directly across the street from 204 and 206, or 6 and 8, whatever they are. I have lived there for 30 plus years with my husband. We own the home, and I'm very concerned what this will mean for us. We are one of the there's very few actual homeowners that live, let's see, what do you call it? You call it resident, living within your home in that area. So I know we are definitely in a minority, and for probably being the only person that is speaking out, I guess, against this. It sounds like it's a wonderful program. I truly don't want it across the street from me. Call me prejudiced. I don't think I am, but apparently by whoever's definition I am. My questions. Will there be children younger than school age living in this place, should this pass? Which I think I'm getting the impression that it's a no-brainer that it will. It's kind of a done deal. But will there be children younger than school age living in the proposed place? What hours and days would someone be in the office area if that is approved to be an office area? I don't understand why, I don't know why the people that were staying in hotels, motels, why that cannot continue. And I know I sound just horrible, but if there are so many homeless families, just these 6 to 8 families, apparently that's just a tiny little drop in the bucket. So is this strictly experimental? And who wants to buy my house for some more homeless people?
I'm John Geisel. I live with Andy Coyle. She's my wife of 30 years last week. I was telling some friends I play golf with that this proposed thing was going to take place, or the hearing was going to take place. And one guy said, well, you better get a gun. And unfortunately, that's the perception. You know, I guess it's my understanding that some of the people will be with disabilities. Is that correct? Is that correct? Or will all of them have disabilities, of some child with disabilities?
That's a question for the township, but I don't.
can't hear you.
I said I think that's a question for the township, but I don't think that's relevant.
Well, okay.
I mean, we cannot
I've noticed
discriminate
that
against
when
people
I
with
looked over at the
disabilities.
apartments, it looks like there's 6. Is there any plans for, are there more than 6 apartments at that location?
Yes, there are 8.
4 on each side?
Yes.
Okay. So an office will be in one of the apartments?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Well, I have mixed feelings because I understand that it's a need, and everybody wants to say, not in my backyard. And I just wish there were some assurances that my home will be safe. So I thank you guys for your time and your concern. I can't say I'm totally against it, but I never thought about buying a gun, and I still won't. But I just wanted to let you know my thoughts.
Good evening. My
Good evening.
name is Marilyn Heinsohn, and I reside at 206 East California in Urbana, number 2. I was blessed with being able to sign a lease for the current year going into next summer. And the reason I was really blessed is because I am currently unemployed. In September, my unemployment will be getting cut off. Hopefully, I will be working, and this housing unit that we're discussing is very reasonably priced, and I'll be able to sustain myself for several months. But if I had to find a new apartment right now, like everyone else I live with, I don't know where I would be, what I would be doing, because I don't have a job. My job closed in March of 2020 and did not reopen. So I don't have employment to put down. Now, that's the reason I say I'm very blessed to be there. And I apologize for not having known that you guys would be making more decisions about this apartment complex, because we all, those of us who live in this complex, have been communicating with the Urbana City Council thinking that they would be making decisions on something that is concerning us. But now I understand why they never responded to our emails. I moved into this apartment in June of 2020 in the middle of COVID, May, June. I consider it my home. If you can, you can notice it in the picture. There are flowers in front of my apartment. And I now have plants in front of my apartment. I put up a wreath and flowers and decorations for Christmas. This is my home we're talking about. I am going to be getting ready to retire in several years, and I looked forward to staying here until my children decided that I could no longer be by myself and I needed to move in with one of them. This is true for all of the residents who live and lived in this complex. We all want to stay here. Many of the residents before I moved in here have lived here for 3, 5, 7, I don't know how many years. In May of 2021, we received this letter dropped off on our door that the Cunningham Township Supervisor Office has purchased this property, which we knew. Well, we found out here. I didn't know ahead of time. With the intention of operating housing assistance programs, including our bridge emergency housing for disabled residents, as well as children in Urbana schools and their families. I do not disagree with their mission. I understand their mission. I think it's a need in this community, their mission to help residents and to help these, the people who need housing. What I disagree with, and again, I apologize for you not receiving my email, I disagree with the way they did it. They gave us this letter. They told my friends and fellow residents that they had to move out by the 15th of August, giving them a few months to have to make a decision to move. The rent here, in case you're not aware, $600, maybe $610, $620. You cannot find housing in Urbana this cheap. That's why the people who live here have been here for so long. It's reasonable. And as several people have said, it's a wonderful place to live in Urbana. Everything is right there. When you get old and you can't have transportation, there's several of our residents, well, some of them who are no longer there, they don't have a car. They walk everywhere. So this is a homey place. And yes, it's a great place to put children. Or not children, but a great place for families. It's close to everything. I want to be on record that I disagreed with how they did it. We, as in our community, asked the supervisor to meet with us to discuss things. No, we couldn't do that because of COVID. Yet last week, she had a meeting at the library in the middle of the numbers going up, once again, to meet with the public to tell them what you were going to decide to do. There's no difference. We're still in the pandemic. These people had to move. Many of them had to pay now $200 more a month in rent. And just so you know, your decision has already been made. Because last week I asked the supervisor how soon she would be moving people in there. Her answer was, well, the board will probably approve on August 23rd or whatever day it is, and we'll be moving them in the next week. But you have to get these apartments ready. In reference to the man who wrote the letter to you all at the Cunningham, whatever it is, auto place, he's right. He's right about the children. He's not right about the people. And, I'm offended at the person who said, such people. I get real offended with words like that. Such people, those people, them. That's offensive. And I agree with Danielle Chenoweth. That's offensive. But this place is not a good place for that many children. And they're going to have to make some renovations and some changes. In fact, I have grandchildren. They come to visit me. And yes, they run through the gate, they go in the parking lot, and there's cars out there during the market of the square. And I have a heart attack, and I yell for them. So yes, there are going to have to be some adjustments made. The last time my 3-year-old visited me, I don't know what the regulations is on this fencing that you see. He stuck his head through the fence. So that's probably going to need to be adjusted or looked at before we start moving people in. And let me check my notes. Because I agree with it. I don't like the way it was done. I wish we would have given the people that lived there time, an adjustment period. Like for me, example, I have a year to adjust. I don't disagree with moving out because I have a year to find something. I understand her circumstances where she wants to house these people. It's needed. It is. I just don't like the way it was done. And then I asked them about the merchandise, the items that are going to be put in these apartments, because I work with children. You're going to have children putting their mouth on stuff and playing with stuff and touching things. What is the protocol for that? Are they taking all those toys and stuff with them? Because that's an issue. That's going to have to be cleaned. Do they have a staff to take care of that? I don't know. That question was never answered. Let me just see. I want to make sure I hit all my points. But like I said, you know, we asked to meet with her, and the answer was no. We just wanted, you know, just common courtesy. Come talk to us. Let us know what's going on. But now most of the person in 208, 1 and 4 have moved out. 206, number 4 has moved out. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and I do not disagree with what she's trying to do. I just don't like how she's doing it. Your decision has already made, as far as I'm concerned, because like I said, she's telling people she's moving people in there at the end of the month. I just wanted you to know that and be aware. So, you know, maybe this is how Urbana politics works. You already have made decisions. We come here and we blow our wind for no reason. We talk. But I remember very vividly in Champaign when the school board bought some property and tried to convince the public to build a school up by the mall. And guess what? The school is not there. But in Urbana, we do not, as citizens, we don't have a right to change our mind. We can't vote on this. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Just to clarify, this board will just make a recommendation. Our decision tonight will be a recommendation one way or the other to the city council. So you're correct in your first understanding that the city council will be the body that actually votes to approve or disapprove.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else would like to make comments in opposition? If not, we'll give an opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Angie Williams, and I am currently living at 206 California. My fiance and I will be moving August 15th. And I just kind of want to clarify something that Marilyn had touched on, who was a speaker right before me. Where we lived is a community at 206 and 208 of our own. We were all very, very close. Eric and I, this is our 5th year at this residence. And we did ask to meet as a group. We were offered to meet individually, but we felt it was important to know exactly what was going to become of our buildings in person, rather than a piece of paper stating their intentions. Anyway, I just feel like I understand things so much better now. I just wish it was done at the very beginning, since May 7th, instead of taking so long to become pretty much public. And I believe Esther Pat had said something about Tony Blacker, the auto owner next to us. I don't think that his comment should be dismissed. I hope that the township will get in touch with him personally and discuss any concerns that he may have for not only himself, but his business. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, I'll give an opportunity to the petitioner if you want to respond to any of the comments that have been made.
Sure, thank you. So I tried to record the questions. I'm going to respond to the questions that I heard, and if there are ones that I missed, please remind me. There was a question about children younger than school-aged, and I just want to point out that the Fair Housing Act requires that and it's illegal in the city of Urbana not only to discriminate against people with disabilities, but also folks based on the age of their children. Currently, children of any age can live at this property. The second is what hours and days in the office would they have? And that's easy for us to respond to. Our office hours are 8:30 to 12 and 1 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. Will there be times when there are staff members who stop by the property by the request of a participant after hours? Probably. That will happen at some time. I think it would be rare, and it would not, be, late in the late evening. We do have our food deliveries happen through the Channing Murray Foundation on Wednesday evenings. And they also deliver at request, and that would be dinner time. They're essentially bringing dinner. That would just be like Uber Eats showing up to your apartment and delivering food to your apartment, which happens all the time. It takes about as much time to do that delivery. Why people can't continue to stay in the hotel? The hotel has become cost prohibitive. It does not allow people to stay longer than 28 days by law. And weekends where there are special events in the community, they do not have vacancies. So essentially we'd be asking families to come into the housing from their cars or the streets, and then we would send them back into the streets and the cars, and we're not going to do that. We will not operate this program out of a hotel. If the special use permit is not allowed, then we will close the program. Why are there so many, if there are so many homeless children? This is a great question. There are 188 children who were registered as homeless in Urbana schools in 2019. There are two definitions of homeless. One is the McKinney-Vento Definition Act homeless, which means that you have not a fixed place to live. You're staying with friends and family, doubled up, you're moving around. And the other definition is that you're literally a homeless staying in an unsafe situation, an abandoned building, a car, the streets, or fleeing domestic violence. So our program only serves literally homeless families who are not fleeing domestic violence. If a family is fleeing domestic violence, they are referred to Courage Connection. We do not have the safety protocols in place to keep those families safe, and we screen very carefully for that. We do not allow, at this point, families that are McKinney-Vento Definition Act homeless. With additional capacity, we may take those referrals, just as Emergency Family Shelter does. So Emergency Family Shelter in Champaign, that serves all of Champaign County, prioritize literally homeless families first, and then if there's space, they will take McKinney-Vento Definition Act homeless. We have generally seen that for literally homeless families with children in Urbana schools, we're talking about 4, 5, 6 families at a time, and not more. That's why we feel that we can address the capacity. Are there other needs? Of course, and I could keep you here all night talking about the needs that we have for housing in our community, but I will spare you that and continue to message that at the town board meetings. And then I just want to speak to the issue of the current renters. I want to clarify that the town board approved a lease that allows current renters, this was my recommendation to them, that allows current renters to stay through December 31st on a month-to-month basis. No renter has chosen that option, partly because we provided a $2,000 incentive to relocate by August 15th. That is their choice. 5 of the renters chose that incentive. 1 renter moved and declined the incentive and has donated a number of her furniture and pieces to the program. So essentially, the 6 folks who were currently staying there who did not have leases, and we were not necessarily aware of their situation, but in one circumstance, are relocating at their choice by August 15th, but they do have till December 15th. And as I explained to the tenants at the current location, due to confidentiality, I'm not going to discuss their cases in a group setting. And I didn't think it was particularly safe during COVID to do that. We are not required, but strongly encouraged by the city of Urbana to have a public or neighborhood meeting and to do that in person, and we complied with that request, which was the city's. I actually don't feel particularly safe being in any public meeting right now. I wish we were on Zoom right now, to be clear, but I'm here because I have to be, and I want to make sure that we can move this forward. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer them that may have come up through the discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Chenoweth. Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll declare the public input portion of the meeting closed and go into discussion and possibly entertain a vote. Is there any discussion on the proposal from the commission? Mr. Fell?
Another question. This is a question for staff. There's no one from building safety here, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If the program continues to operate with tenants in excess of 30 days, there's no building safety review of the property in terms of the residential use?
I am not sure about that. So I'll make
Okay,
sure to
so-
check into that
okay, my
before
question
it
is,
goes
okay,
on.
I'm not sure how I want to word this.
I wouldn't think there would be, since it's not changing the building.
It's not
code
changing its designation under the building
classification,
code.
So there
So
shouldn't be.
there would be no building safety review of the property,
I mean,
we assume.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, no more discussion. If there's no more discussion, are we ready to make a motion?
Okay. I move that we send, make sure I got the right, plan case 2427 SU21 to the city council with a recommendation of approval with the 2 conditions recommended by staff.
We have a second? Second by Ms. Billman. Is there any further discussion? I'll just say that I agree with the assessment by staff. I think this is a project and a proposal that makes a lot of sense, particularly in terms of the location of the project and its accessibility to schools and parks and all of the services that I think people living in these apartments and in the emergency housing will be able to make good use of. So with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
Mr. Allred,
Yes.
Ms. Billman,
Yes.
and Mr. Fell.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes. Do we have a date for council?
We do. It's first going through the committee of the whole, which is it's the same group that is city council. It just allows for more discussion. That's going on the 16th of August.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So back to the agenda. New business. Case number CCZBA 008 AT21. Amend section 5.2 of the Champaign County zoning ordinance by adding agronomic research and training facility as a special use permit in the AG1 agriculture and AG2 agriculture zoning district.
Kevin, is this your jump drive?
It looks like we'll have a presentation by Mr. Ricci.
Thank you very much. The proposed text amendment is of interest to the city of Urbana because it may affect zoning and land development decisions within the city's 1.5 mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. The city has subdivision and land development jurisdiction within the ETJ, while the county holds zoning jurisdiction in this area. It is the Plan Commission's responsibility to recommend to City Council whether or not to protest the proposed text amendment. Under state law, a municipal protest of the proposed amendment would require a 3/4 supermajority of votes to approve the request at the county board. Otherwise, a simple majority would be required. Staff believes that the proposed text amendment does not directly affect the use of land or affect the city's ability to manage growth and development, and recommends no protest of the text amendment. Earlier this year, the Champaign County Department of Planning and Zoning received an inquiry to construct a corporate-owned agronomic research facility on 300 acres in an agriculturally zoned district outside the ETJ of any municipality. No fertilizer sales are proposed at the activity. The case could be heard by the Champaign County Board at its August 19th meeting. If approved at that time, a special use permit could be heard as early as the September 19th CCZBA meeting. According to Champaign County planning staff, there is currently no use similar to the proposed use in the county ordinance. County staff determined that the proposed amendment would not impede achievement of several goals of the Champaign County Land Resource Management Plan, which is the only document that guides for zoning text amendments for the Champaign County ordinance. The proposed text amendment would also help achieve the purpose of the ordinance itself by providing a use classification that will allow an agricultural related business and a means to regulate an activity for which there is demonstrated demand. County land within the city's ETJ is dominated by agricultural zoning, with small areas zoned residential and conservation. Almost all of the agriculturally zoned land in the county within the city's ETJ is zoned Ag 2, including almost all county land south of Interstate 74. Regarding city zoning, the city does not have a use similar to the proposed use. If the proposed amendment were approved, an agronomic research and training facility could be sited in county ag zoned land and later annexed into the city with automatic conversion to city ag zoning. Regarding implications for development within the city's ETJ, within the city's municipal boundaries, the proposed amendment does not directly affect the use of land, nor does it affect the city's ability to manage growth and development. If such a facility were proposed within the ETJ, the city would still be notified of an application for a special use permit for the facility and could still review that application and submit comments to the county board prior to its decision by the county board. Furthermore, if a facility were proposed in an area served by the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, the developer would be required to enter into an annexation agreement with the city, which would give the city more negotiating power to ensure that the use would be beneficial and not harmful to the surrounding area. As such, staff does not anticipate a negative effect on the city's ability to plan or manage growth or development. The proposed text amendment was reviewed for consistency with the city's 2005 comprehensive plan. 11 goals with 18 objectives were found to be relevant to the amendment, and those are listed in the staff report. The proposed county zoning ordinance text amendment is generally consistent with these city goals and objectives. In summary, locating commercial facilities in areas near the city with available infrastructure and adjacent to compatible land uses. Summarizing the staff findings, the Champaign County Zoning Administrator is requesting a text amendment to this Champaign County zoning ordinance to allow agronomic research and training facility as a special use permit in the Ag 1 and Ag 2 agricultural zoning districts. The proposed text amendment is generally compatible with the land use policy goals and objectives of the Urbana Comprehensive Plan, and it would not negatively affect land uses or the ability of the city to manage growth and development of land currently within the city's ETJ. The Plan Commission has the following options in this case: to forward the plan case to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest, forward the plan case to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest contingent upon specific provisions to be identified, or forward the plan case to the City Council with a recommendation to approve a resolution of protest. So just to try and make things clear, the resolution that is always presented to City Council is a resolution to protest. So you either vote to defeat that resolution of protest or you approve that resolution of protest. Based on the findings above, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest as presented. That is the end of my staff report. I believe Susan Bergstrom is here from Champaign County if you have any questions. And so here I am.
Thank you, Mr. Ricci. Any questions for Mr. Ricci, or is it Ms. Bergstrom?
Okay.
I had a question,
Oh.
Mr. Ricci. I'm not going to get off so easy there. So the proposed project that generated this request is outside of the ETJ.
Of
but-
any municipality.
Right. But once this change is made, anyone could make a proposal for a similar type project that would have to go through the special use procedure in one of these areas that are adjacent to subdivisions within the municipality's boundaries. Are there any compatibility issues that you guys foresee in that instance? It wasn't clear to me. It's a research facility, but their research involves fertilizer. Are they producing fertilizer? Are they producing it at a scale that might create issues of compatibility with those kind of residential uses? I don't know if you had any more information on that.
So it's too early to tell because this is simply adding this definition to the table of uses. When you start getting into the specifics of it, then you get into, agricultural uses and state exemption from zoning. So it's more focusing on the training facility of between 400 and 600 persons. This particular proposal, I believe, and I'll let Susan clarify, was for research on fertilizer, a large digital hub / computer lab that would coordinate global research on fertilizer, applying test fertilizer to crops, so that would be the majority of what the land would use. So I think in the memo it talked about out of the 300 acres, like 8 acres would be put under pavement or used in buildings, and the rest of it would be used for crops.
Okay. And just to be clear, if there was a proposal within the ETJ, then it would go through the special use approval process, and we would have a chance to influence that.
At that
decision.
point, you'd be seeing site plans and stuff like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we're ready to make a motion.
I'll go. I move we send plan case CCZBA -008-AT-21 to the City Council with a recommendation to defeat a resolution of protest.
All right, motion by Mr. Fell,
Second.
second by Ms. Yu. Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Billman,
Yes.
Mr. Fell,
Yes?
Ms. Yu,
Yes.
And Mr. Allred.
Yes. All right. Audience participation. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Plan Commission for 4 minutes uninterrupted? And we are losing our only potential addressee, so I'm going to guess that there is no one. Do we have a staff report?
We have no staff report.
Okay, looks like we do have a study session related to the comprehensive plan update.
I have a question.
Yes.
How in-depth is this going to be? I feel emotionally drained from this previous thing. It's short? Okay. Okay.
And we don't have a full complement of plan commissioners, so it'll probably be shorter than this, the study session.
What are you implying there, Mr. Garcia?
I am implying nothing. Before Lena gets started, I wanted to introduce her because this is the first time she's been before this commission. So this is Lena Walker. She is a recent grad from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Illinois. She has a master's degree now in urban and regional planning. Pardon? Oh, almost? Sorry, I thought you graduated. It's okay. And so she's only been with us for a couple of months, but she has worked extensively on our Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan, especially the outreach efforts, and also she's been entering a lot of the survey data that we're getting and coding it and looking at the really interesting key insights that can be gleaned out of all that survey data. So it's really great work that she's done on the survey, and when she presented it to staff last week, I immediately thought that she should bring it to Plan Commission. So I thought it was some really great stuff. So that's what she's here for. So I will let her take it away.
Thank you. How do I? Oh, sorry, this is my only second time doing this, so I'm not sure how to make the presentation. All right, it worked. Thank you. I'll try to talk clearly into the mic. I'm not used to the mask thing as well. So just really quickly, we wanted to give you some summary of input that we have got so far on the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan. Oh, that's nice. There's animated graphics. So just very quickly, where we're kind of at right now, we have an online survey that is also can be filled out on paper. There's the idea wall on the Imagine Urbana website. We have these postcards called Futuregrams where people can write or draw feedback. And then we also have Urbana bingo cards that have been passed out that people can, it's like something that people can do to participate in. So here you can see, as of right now, we have about 125 surveys completed and about 116 submissions on the idea wall. This map here is just showing the outlines are of neighborhood associations, approximate outlines, and then these dots are people who have told us what cross street they live on when filling out the survey. So about 60% of the people that have filled one out have provided cross streets. So obviously this is not a total picture, but it does give a good general idea of kind of where we've received input so far.
You mean who was noisiest?
Sorry? Yes. Well, and we're definitely, we can see where we haven't heard enough. That's always a good thing. So some of the questions on the survey that we really wanted to highlight, what these are sort of summary topics that we have developed from going through all of this survey data and reading all of these responses and kind of looking for patterns and topics that come up again and again. So this here is kind of a list of how people who have given feedback so far kind of imagine what Urbana could be in 20 years. A lot of stuff comes up about, downtown, concerns about taxes, love of the arts, public spaces, different comments on density and development, and the ever popular infrastructure also is important. Also, a sort of similar but question with some key differences is what should Urbana's priorities be over the next 20 years? And this phrase at the bottom is kind of how we best summed it up, of a general impression of sort of keep what's good. We love our city, we should keep what's good, but what we can improve, we should be open to changing. These were some of the priorities that were kind of identified from that input that people gave. And then another question from the survey we wanted to highlight was how people are responding to the question of what the community can do to address opportunities and challenges. And again, these two phrases at the top are kind of the overarching feedback that we've got is, on the one hand, again, embracing change while preserving quality of life. And then also a lot of concerns about equity in Urbana and wanting to imagine an Urbana in the future that values equity a lot and is really sort of part of the choices that we make about future development. And you can see there that those are just some of the kind of summaries of what people have said. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight a couple submissions from the idea wall. You can read all of these on imagineurbana.com if you haven't already. So that can be a fun thing to look through. And it's really interesting to see because, especially with the idea wall where people are just kind of free to express themselves, you see a very interesting mix of the kind of feedback that you get. So down on the bottom right there, you see that somebody has actually provided a PDF or a link to a PDF of a manual about walkable urban thoroughfares. So sometimes you get these very technical submissions, and then other times you get things that are a lot more general, like, you know, I want to see more arts programming, or let's build a skate park. So there's a lot of really interesting information to sort through there and opportunities to sort of generate community conversation. And so that's really pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or if there's any slides you want to go back to, but that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of processing the survey data.
Great, thank you, Ms. Walker. Any questions?
If you can go back to a few slides, one more. So I saw there's a comment here says restructure laws or zoning to allow for change. As a plan commissioner, I really do wonder when will those opportunities be presented and when those things could happen.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think our long-term strategy is to come up with the comprehensive plan, get that out there, and I think from what we can glean out of the comprehensive plan about what people want to see, then we'll be able to rewrite our zoning ordinance, possibly wholesale from the ground up, to actually try and make the comprehensive plan a reality, because at the end of the day, your comprehensive plan is often only as good as your zoning ordinance. So I think maybe a missed opportunity from the last time that we wrote a comprehensive plan is we didn't really do any wholesale change to our zoning ordinance at that time. I mean, we did some piecemeal changes that I think make our zoning ordinance now better than it was when that plan was adopted, but we really need to look at it holistically. So that's kind of a long way to answer your question. I think if Lori Pearson were here, she would say her common refrain is finish the comp plan, rewrite the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Yeah, that's promising.
I agree.
Sounds good. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. So the last thing we have, we pushed from the last meeting, and I assume we want to try and do it this time?
I guess that's up to the plan commission. I mean, I'm only seeing 4 out of 7 plan commissioners here, so.
Do we all need to do this at one point? So
I mean, I feel like it would be most beneficial if we could get the largest group possible.
Okay.
So maybe, I mean.
Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe we could, I would entertain a motion to continue this until the next meeting, and then if we end up with only 4 at that time, let's just knock it out.
Okay, sounds good. So do we have a motion?
I move that we continue the closed session to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
We have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Do we need say aye? Yeah.
Aye.
All right.
I don't know. I think we're kind of winging it, so.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.